It was just past midnight when the knock came. The mechanic wiped his hands on a rag, half expecting trouble. But when he opened the door, there stood a trembling woman clutching a child, wet, barefoot, and desperate. What he said next changed everything. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. The rain was still steaming off Jacob Carter's flannel sleeves as he twisted the final bolt under the hood of a battered Chevy. His garage was quiet, except for the low hum of an old radio and the occasional screech of wind outside. He was a single dad, widowed 5 years ago, raising his 10-year-old son Noah in a sleepy North Carolina town where nothing ever happened until that night. He heard the knock, not the casual kind. It was frantic, urgent. When he opened the door, a woman stood there, soaked to the bone. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her hand trembled as she held onto a small boy, maybe 5 or 6, with bruised cheeks and hollow eyes. "Please," she whispered. "I don't have anywhere else to go. He almost found us." Jacob hesitated for half a heartbeat, then stepped aside. "Come in." She gasped a thank you, as if she hadn't heard kindness in years. Jacob fetched towels, handed the boy one of Noah's spare sweatshirts, and set a kettle on the stove. Noah came out rubbing his eyes, but froze when he saw the strangers. Jacob gave him a look, quiet, calm. The boy didn't ask questions. He just nodded. "Sit," Jacob told the woman, his voice gentle now. "Tell me what happened." Her name was Emily Ross, and her son was Tyler. She had been married to a man who looked perfect on paper, a finance executive, well-connected. But he was dangerous, controlling, abusive. She fled after he left bruises on Tyler's arm that wouldn't fade for weeks. For months they'd been running, never staying in one place too long. "But I think he tracked me," Emily whispered, glancing at the window. "I saw a black car parked outside the shelter. We left through the back and just ran. Then I saw the lights from your garage." Jacob's jaw clenched. "You're safe here, I promise." Emily stared at him for a long time. Then the tears came. That night, Jacob made up the couch for her and put Tyler in Noah's room. He stayed up, just watching the dark from the garage window, the wrench in his lap. But he didn't know. Helicopters would surround his house 2 days later, and everything would explode. Jacob didn't sleep much that night, or the one after. He kept checking the windows, sitting in his garage with his coffee going cold, eyes scanning the tree line. But Emily and Tyler? They slept like they hadn't in months. And maybe that's what kept Jacob from pushing them to leave. He saw how Tyler clung to Noah's old stuffed bear, how Emily flinched every time the floor creaked. There was a story, in her silence, a war behind her eyes. The next morning, Jacob made pancakes. Not the quick kind, the real, buttery, crisp-edged kind. He even carved apples into stars, just to see Tyler smile. "You didn't have to do this," Emily said quietly. "Yeah," Jacob replied, flipping one. "But you didn't have to knock on my door either, yet here we are." Noah, ever the curious soul, pulled up beside Tyler and offered him a spoonful of peanut butter like it was currency. Within 5 minutes, the boys were laughing like old friends. For a while, the house felt full, warm. But Jacob knew too well how fast warmth could turn to flame. It started that afternoon. 2 black SUVs crawled slowly down their sleepy road. Jacob spotted them from the barn and told Emily to go inside, fast. They didn't stop, but they didn't look like locals either. That night, Jacob dug through his storage shed and dusted off an old shotgun. Not loaded, just the shell. But something about holding it, reminded him who he was. Not just a mechanic, a father, a protector. Then came the second morning. The sun barely crept up over the horizon. Birds hadn't even started yet. Jacob stepped out with a mug in hand, and that's when he heard it. Whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. Distant at first, but growing louder, deeper, shaking the gravel under his boots. He looked up, and his heart dropped. 3 helicopters, military-grade, unmarked, flying low, slicing through the fog like knives. They surrounded the property. One landed in the cornfield, another hovered near the barn, and the last circled wide, dust kicking up like a sandstorm. Jacob shouted for Noah, then for Emily. Doors slammed. Armed men in black stepped out. Tactical gear, no insignia. "Stay inside," Jacob barked, arms spread, stepping in front of his house like a human shield. The lead man approached, tall, stern, a deep scar across his left eyebrow. "Jacob Carter?" he asked. Jacob nodded slowly. "We're not here for you. We're here for her." He pointed to Emily, who had stepped out behind Jacob, barefoot, trembling, but with defiance in her eyes. Then the man's expression softened. "I need to speak with Miss Ross. Alone. It's urgent." "What the hell is going on?" Jacob demanded, shielding her with his arm. But Emily stepped forward. "It's okay," she whispered. I know who sent them." And her hands, which had been shaking for days, suddenly steadied. Emily didn't flinch as the lead agent stepped closer. Her voice was low, but firm. "Who sent you?" The man looked at her, really looked at her. Then slowly he unhooked a badge from beneath his vest. "Not police. Federal. My name is Agent Reed. I'm with the Department of Justice. You're not in trouble, Ms. Ross. You're not the target. You're the witness." Jacob's eyes narrowed. Witness to what? Reed took a breath. "To the largest money laundering scheme tied to domestic arms dealing in recent history. Your ex-husband isn't just a violent man. He's the key to a national-level investigation. And thanks to you, we're finally close to bringing him down." Emily's face paled. You tracked me?" "No," Reed said. "He did. We were just following him." She swayed. Jacob caught her elbow gently. "But how did he find me here?" she whispered. Reed looked grim. "Your old landlord. He cashed in a favor. That's how your ex found the shelter. We intercepted him before he got close. But we knew he'd try again. So we watched every route. Then, we saw you vanish, until you popped up here." He glanced at Jacob. "This man saved your life, without even knowing it." Emily looked at Jacob, and her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but her throat caught. Too much, too fast. Reed continued. "We need you in protective custody, you and your son, now." Jacob stepped forward. "And what happens to her if she says no?" "Then her ex will. He's already got men in this county. He's not going to stop, not until she's silenced." "And your son?" He glanced at Noah, peeking from behind the door. "We'll never be safe." Emily turned to Jacob, eyes full of panic and sadness. "I don't want to run anymore. But I don't want Tyler growing up afraid. What would you do?" Jacob didn't answer right away. He just looked down at his calloused hands, then at the boy clutching a crayon-drawn picture of him and Noah. "I'd stop running, but I wouldn't run into someone else's plan either." Reed raised an eyebrow. "What's that mean?" Jacob stepped closer. "You're not taking her anywhere unless I come too." Reed blinked. "Mr. Carter, you're not—" "I'm her witness now," Jacob said firmly. "She walked into my home. My son shared his room. We kept her safe when no one else did. So if this is going down, I'm in." There was a long pause. Then Reed nodded. Fine, but it won't be easy. You'll have to disappear too. Jacob met Emily's eyes. That's all right. Wasn't much of a life here anyway. Emily's lips trembled. Why would you do this? Jacob didn't say anything. He just gently picked up Tyler and said, because I've seen what fear does to kids, and I'm not letting yours grow up broken. They left before sunrise. No goodbye, no notes, not even a flick of the porch light. Jacob tossed a duffel in the back of the black Suburban, Noah still half asleep in the back seat. Emily held Tyler so close, her knuckles went white. And just like that, they vanished into the fog, escorted by 3 black SUVs and the watchful eye of a hovering chopper. Noah didn't ask where they were going. He just looked at Jacob in the rearview mirror and said quietly, "Is she family now?" Jacob smiled faintly. "Yeah, bud, I guess she is." What followed were days of relocations, safe houses, alias, documents, code names. Jacob became Mark Evans. Emily was now Claire Holt. Tyler and Noah, officially cousins on paper. It was surreal, like they'd been drafted into a movie they didn't audition for. But the danger was real, every moment. At their second safe house, a small cabin deep in the Appalachians, Reed returned, pale and grim. He's hunting again. He's not alone this time. His men know you're on the move. Emily clenched her fists. So what now? We hide again. Hope he doesn't catch up? Reed shook his head. No. You testify. She froze. What? We've arrested 2 of his partners. They're talking. But we need the key witness. You. We can seal this if you testify in court. Jacob's jaw tightened. You said she'd be protected. She will be. We'll fly her to D.C. privately. You'll all stay with our top witness protection unit. Emily looked at Jacob, then at Tyler sleeping on the couch beside Noah, finally at peace. I won't run anymore, she whispered. I'll do it. But only if they stay together. Reed nodded. Deal. The next 72 hours moved like lightning. Helicopters, black cars, courtrooms with one-way mirrors. Agents lined the halls like statues. And when Emily stood on that witness stand, shaking but unbroken, she told the truth. All of it. The bruises, the threats, the offshore accounts, the names. Her ex-husband's lawyer tried to smear her, accuse her of manipulation. But the jury saw through him. And when the recording surfaced, the case shattered like glass. He was convicted of multiple counts of racketeering, abuse, and conspiracy. 60 years minimum. But that didn't mean they were free yet. 3 nights later, as they stayed in the final safe house, a small alarm triggered at 3:17 a.m. Jacob bolted upright, hand reaching for the weapon under his bed. Emily grabbed Tyler and pressed herself against the wall. Noah screamed from the other room. Jacob dashed in, only to find the agent on night duty tied to a chair. And in the window, a man in black was slipping inside. Jacob didn't think. He tackled the man with a roar, crashing through the nightstand. The intruder pulled a blade. Jacob slammed his wrist against the edge of the dresser until it cracked. The blade dropped. Then gunshots outside. Shouts. The house lit up like a war zone. Emily crouched over the boys, holding them. Jacob didn't stop fighting until the man lay unconscious on the floor, blood trickling from his lip. When Reed burst in seconds later, armed agents behind him, he stared at the scene. You all right? He shouted. Jacob, panting, bleeding from the forehead, pointed at the man. One of his men. Got past your guy? Reed nodded. Not anymore. That was the last attempt. They moved again the next morning, but this time it wasn't hiding. It was starting over. 6 months later, the mountains were behind them. So were the safe houses, the agents, the fear. They lived now in a small coastal town in Oregon, under new names, in a house that faced the ocean. Jacob opened a small repair shop again, this time in a quiet corner of town, where no one asked too many questions and kindness still lived in the handshake of a stranger. He worked long hours, but his hands had never felt steadier. Emily? She was no longer a shadow of herself. She found work at the town library, her voice louder now, her laughter fuller. Every day she walked Tyler to school, without looking over her shoulder. And the boy who once hid behind her skirt? Tyler was thriving. Best friends with Noah, soccer team, drawing pictures of dragons and mechanics. Safe, happy. One warm evening, Jacob grilled hot dogs on the porch while Noah and Tyler played tag in the yard. Emily leaned in the doorway, a book in hand, but her eyes never left Jacob. "You ever think about that night?" she asked. He didn't have to ask which one. "Every day," he said, flipping a hot dog. "Mostly about how close I was to shutting that door on you." Emily's voice dropped. "But you didn't." "No," he said, then looked at her, really looked at her. "You knocked, and I answered." She stepped closer. "You didn't just open a door that night, Jacob. You saved our lives." He swallowed, emotions rising fast. "No, Emily, you saved yourself. I just gave you a porch to catch your breath on." A long silence passed between them, warm and full. Then Noah screamed from the yard, laughing. "Dad, Tyler just called me a tuna sandwich." Jacob chuckled. "Well, I did teach him some insults. Sorry." Emily laughed too. That sound, it had become his favorite music. Later that night, after the kids were asleep and the house had gone quiet, Jacob sat on the back porch staring at the stars. Emily brought out 2 mugs of cocoa and sat beside him. "I was broken when I arrived," she whispered. "I didn't think I'd ever stop being afraid." He turned to her. "You still scared?" She nodded once. "Of losing this. Of losing you." Jacob exhaled deeply, then leaned forward and kissed her, slow and certain. "You're not losing me, Emily." She smiled. "Promise?" "I swear. On every bolt I've ever turned." They sat there in silence, her head resting on his shoulder, cocoa warming their hands, stars above like quiet witnesses. The world had broken them both. But kindness? It stitched them back together. And when people in town asked who they were, no one ever knew the truth. They were just the mechanic and the librarian with 2 loud boys in a house by the ocean. But once, not long ago, helicopters had surrounded their home, and everything had changed.